Hi, so this is part 3 of the Betty George, Dewi Evans interview, and this is about at 33 minutes he starts talking about working in the legal field. And the first case he got, which was to defend his to defend a family in Northern Ireland, and he says, I saw the case, and I thought, oh, this sounds interesting to me. Doesn't it just sound like when he goes, oh, this sounds like my sort of case? And he won the case, makes a big thing. We won the case. That's important that he won. And he says, to be honest, I don't think the barrister was making much sense in the first place. So, yeah, that's, looking down on authority figures, quite narcissistic there, and he's kind of got a bit of a low opinion of barristers. And at 35, Betty asks, so how do you stand up in front of barristers? And, she says that, I'm being cross-questioned. And she says, the barrister called you worthless and said your report had no weight, and it's a bit of a tough question, and I mean it is part of the whole Lucy Letby case, which he's going to talk about anyway. So it is a fair question, and she goes, How do you respond when the barrister calls you, worthless? She says it like that. So it's interesting when the barrister calls you, I don't know if there's some slippage there, whether she's agreeing with the barrister there. And she says, worthless. I think that might be a bit of, a bit of nerves about asking that question. The way Dewi Evans replies is interesting. This looks like typical narcissistic deflection of a question that he doesn't like, and we've seen him do this before. Like, well, what do they know? Is it important? We've seen this before. So he says, well, they're like that, aren't they? A few months later, it's another case. They'll be your best friend. And barristers are hunters. Or I've got barristers are fishers. But it's kind of the same thing. Basically they're always fishing for info. And he doesn't say much. It's a few short sentences. There is disdain in his voice, for the question, for having to talk about it, but he doesn't like having to answer that question at all. So Betty asks, do you feel completely confident? And he goes, oh yes. And he means, oh yes, he's completely in his element. I mean, you know, well, you have to. You have a fair idea, and you see that he's in his element. You know, he expands, he talks more, he's got plenty to say. You have a fair idea of what the questions are going to be. You have to be clear and concise, or you have to be clear and explain. You have to say to yourself, it's me who knows, I who am the expert, not them. And something like, oh dear, it's a web with them. It was a bit difficult to hear because there was a bit of crackle on that bit. It was something like, oh dear, it's a web with them. Most of them have no medical background. I haven't had much trouble, to tell the truth, because if you have trouble, of course you shouldn't be doing this work in the first place. And Beti goes, So she's listening and considering what he's saying. So when he, and I think he does say it's a web with them, so does it mean that they are spinning the web and he's trussing them up in their own web, or does it mean that he's the one spinning the web to catch them in? You know, I'm not sure, but I mean, the idea of him, you know, being the kingpin and spinning the web, and, you know, everyone is caught up in this web of his. That's an idea. Maybe I've mentioned it in other videos, but I've had this idea of him like that for a very, very long time. What you must be when giving evidence in any case, that means in any court case, is you have to be completely impartial and to keep within your expertise. Several doctors think that they are there for the sake of the prosecution or the side of the defence. That's not your job. Your job is for that job is for the barrister. Your job is to give evidence and facts, scientific and medical, which are complicated, which is within your experience and expertise, and in the current textbooks, Beti. And if you just keep to that, you can't go wrong. Now, that, on the face of it, that actually sounds pretty reasonable, right? You know, you go to court as an expert witness, you're supposed to be impartial, you're supposed to stick within your own field of knowledge. But I don't know why. I haven't picked apart the actual words. This sounds like he's using this as his playbook. He's describing his playbook to do what he does, the not very nice things that he does, and to, you know, hide within plain sight, basically, and to get away with chopping and changing his mind, as he's already mentioned in that video, and Chris has covered in that video that he did. So he is dismissive. He is very dismissive of barristers, and he's talking, the way he talks there, it's about, he's the one controlling the script. rather than, you know, being the expert witness and answering questions, you know, even though you should be prepared and, you know, be focused and in control of your answers. But this is rather than being in control of himself. He's being in control of them. And it's like he can use, I mean, because he says, well, they don't hardly ever have a medical background, so I've got the advantage. I've got one over on them to start with. That's not why you're going into court to be an expert witness. You're going into court to be an expert witness to give extra information that can help the case. You know, of course the barristers aren't going to have information, aren't going to have expertise in medicine or in industry or in flower arranging, because, hello, they're barristers. Their expertise is in law. So whatever you know, in whichever field you go in as an expert witness, you're going to have more knowledge than them. And your job is to answer the questions and present that knowledge to inform the court. It's not a battleground with you winning. So, I mean, this is why. And obviously here he describes his modus operandi. So when he says you have to be completely impartial, yeah, we kind of all know he wasn't. But I guess if you're that psychopathic and you go in and you look impartial, and if you're out for yourself and only yourself, well, of course you're going to be impartial, whether you're doing it for the court or the defence or the prosecution. You would have an impartial standpoint as far as the court was concerned in that instance, if that makes sense. Several doctors think they're there for the side of the prosecution or the side of the defence. That's not your job. So he outlines the job, but it's kind of as if he's using the framework of what that job is. For his own advantage. So give evidence and facts, scientifical and medical, which are complicated. So, and within your experience and expertise, and in the current textbooks, which obviously those silly barristers haven't read. So it's like you're weaponizing your knowledge and experience for your own ends. And if you just keep to that, you won't go wrong. And he has kept to that in his own way, and he hasn't gone wrong. because this is his modus operandi, and he's very, very clever, and you know, he keeps within the rule book enough so that he can't be tripped up. And if anyone ever wanted to trip him up, the only way to do it would be to get hard evidence. But he's kind of very, very clever at, you know, keeping things hidden within knowledge and expertise and textbooks. So he talks a bit more, and the interview ends on a better note than it begun. You know, thank you for your company. It's been a pleasure. That's what Beti says, and she says it in her normal voice, in a full voice, and a happy voice. And she might, you know, it might be that he's won her over with what he said. It might be that she's relieved that she's done this interview. So that's, you know, I don't know, but the interview, the programme, it ends on a normal positive note, shall we say. Now from the way from the introduction, I'd kind of forgotten to mention this. Let's go back a page again. A very warm welcome. A very warm welcome, Dr. Dewi Evans. They don't seem to have met before, and given that you know, first language Welsh community is quite a small place, you know, obviously they will have been on each other's radar, but this does seem like this is the first time they've actually met in person. So, you know, as well as obviously not being too sure about him, this is someone she doesn't quite know how she should greet. And obviously if you knew the person, you'd met them, you'd know sort of, you'd have the measure of them, and she doesn't have the measure of him yet. So that's how the interview ends. Obviously that's how it begins, obviously ends on a much more positive note there. So yeah, that was the things I picked up on in that interview, and it was really, really helpful to have it. So thank you again, Chris, for doing that for me. And so yeah, please like, subscribe, and hope to see you in the next video.